week in racing. It's time to recap it. And who better to do it than Michael and Magic? Two bros/pros who cover the highs and lows of racing around the globe on every one of their shows. Real fans look forward to these guys and their last dance, cause they know they're not talking out of their royal ascot. What they say makes sense. So ladies and gents, sit back and relax as Blinkers Off presents The Magic Mike Show, where you hear the experts speak. The Magic Mike Show. Tune into the show every week. The Magic Mike Show. You can trust the show is the bomb because it's being brought to you by RacingDudes.com.
What's up, everybody? I'm Magic.
And I'm Mike.
And this is the Magic Mike Show. Mr. Samich, I feel refreshed, and not just because I got out of the shower literally 5 minutes before we went on air. How you doing today?
I'm doing good, man. That was nice, wasn't it? Nice, relaxing horse racing weekend. We got some football back, so it was nice to have the horse racing kind of toned down a little bit. We had a crazy weekend the weekend before, and now we're just going to ramp up to Breeders' Cup and just get ready to get this party started. Although, unfortunately, we'll be having all these parties starting in our own houses since we can't actually go to the Breeders' Cup fan-wise.
Yeah, so the news broke over the weekend. If you didn't hear, that Breeders' Cup officially said no fans at the Breeders' Cup this year. But one of the things I think is really great that they did is they immediately said 2022 we're coming back, because there's a lot of lost revenue for the track from the on-sale concessions, the parking, everything. I mean, those tickets are jacked to the max. So there's a lot of things that the track in the area of Lexington really benefits by. Also, Lexington is where the Breeders' Cup is based. That's where their main offices are. So I think it made a ton of sense. They're coming back in 2022. We got Del Mar in 2021, so I'm like, that's all I care about. We're coming back to Del Mar. That is the best Breeders' Cup experience I've ever had. It's not even close, so I'm excited about that. I'm really excited that Kentucky Downs canceled Sunday, and it was very nice that they did it Saturday before the races were done. They said, you know what? Storms are coming. This track needs some time. We're not going to be ready for Sunday, and since it's only turf racing, we're just going to bump it to Tuesday. And that gave everybody who's planning on playing that track time to go, all right, take a break. We'll come back on Tuesday.
Yeah, I love it, man. It gives me a little more time, in case you're wondering what I'm doing. It gives me a little more time. Those are the Kentucky Downs Tuesday PPs for everybody who's not watching us live here on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, all the things. Not Instagram, YouTube, one of these. Anyway, those are the PPs that I pulled up there for tomorrow's card at Kentucky Downs. It's pretty cool that they didn't even redraw it, so that you had the same post position. So the work that I put in on Saturday wasn't a waste. I'm able to just kind of keep moving forward. I love the fact that they called it early too. It's one of those things where it's showing a lot of respect to the bettor, and I'm sure it was a tough call. I mean, they got to think their handle after a record day, 17 million, I think it was on Saturday, to move off of a Sunday onto a Tuesday, and to do it so early so that the bettors have the ability to be able to pivot is really appreciated. So shout out to Kentucky Downs for doing that right. As far as the Breeders' Cup, Del Mar was incredible, man. That was one of the best Breeders' Cups I've ever been to. Rented an Airbnb, was able to walk to the track, some great restaurants around there, and gasp, I've never been to Keeneland. So I'm actually really excited that they're going back in 2022 because, as a horse player at Magic, we really should have been to Keeneland by now. But I haven't, you haven't. So it's nice that they're going back there sooner rather than later. We can check that one off the list.
So you brought up Kentucky. This is going to be the best thing I saw, so we can jump into it. The best thing I saw was Kentucky Downs' record handle on Saturday. And here's some stats. So since I want to take a little bit of credit for this, because since the Magic Mike Show's inception,
we're taking all the credit, baby.
They have had 4 record days since Magic Mike Show came out. So the previous record was September 20, the main big September for their meet. In 2017, the record was just a tick under 8.5 million. That same big Saturday in 2018, our first one, just over 10 million. Last year on the big Saturday, 11.3 million. Thursday of this past week was 8.9 million, which eclipsed the 2017 record. So we've got that. That was the day that you and I were doing the live show previewing Saturday's Late Pick 4. So we can take a little bit of credit of that because we were talking, the Samo bombs were hot.
At least half credit.
Exactly. And then Saturday, 17.4 million. This is over 6.1 million more than their record that they did this Saturday. And the racing was fantastic and it was great. But a track that is so player friendly like Kentucky Downs, when they have big days like that, it's just like, God bless you. You just get so excited as a player because it's showing the rest of these tracks you can succeed and do well with a lower takeout.
Yeah, you really can. And one of the things that they're amazing for, I mean, I love turf racing. I'm better on the turf than dirt. So for me, it's really just it's a Samo bomb paradise for me. I love this place when they get it going. and other places that have done a great job with takeout, places like Indiana Grand and places like Sam Houston and places like Canterbury, all of them have low takeout pick fives. The field sizes just aren't the same as it is for Kentucky Downs, and that partially because it just can't be. It's not possible with those different racetracks. And to be able to have the field sizes that they have with the level of horses that they have, the size of the purses, all on turf, it's just a really unique thing. And Kentucky Downs has done it right. They built it up slowly by having lower takeout, getting buzz. It's a shorter meet. I mean, we're only talking about closing day is Wednesday. How crazy is that? It's a 2-week meet. We're closing day on Wednesday. I'm so bummed. I feel sorry. We turned the corner, starting just crushing there. And then it's just gone. It's out of my life. I'm gonna cry a little bit on Thursday morning when it's all gone. It's gonna be sad.
You're gonna have to go back to facing handicapping turf fields that are less than 16 every single race.
It sounds like a negative, but that's a terrible thing. I want the 16. I want them all. Like, give me all these options so I can pick the right one and get paid. I can get 3-1 on Imprimis. That's a joke. There's no way that horse should be 3-1.
So what about you? What's the best thing that you saw this past weekend?
Oh man, I'm gonna go with football because I was so excited about it. I really liked watching football, and I'm in the Super Contest. So quick little humble brag here: we're 4-0 going into tonight in the Super Contest, looking for the 5-0 first week, which would be pretty incredible. It's a great.
Who's your pick for tonight in the Super Contest?
I don't even know if I should say it. I'm going to jinx myself here. I have Tennessee -2.5 tonight. I use them. I'm in Circa Millions and I'm in Super Contest. I'm 4-0 on both, with both Tennessee out to go 5-0 in both entries. So it was a good NFL weekend, and it's if you don't know what those contests are, they're a blast to play. They're $1,000 and $1,500 buy-in. The winner gets over $1 million for both of those two, and there's quarterly prizes. So going 5-0 like week one is huge because you get $100,000 if you're top of the heap after 4 quarters or 4 weeks. So just that quick of a start gives you an actual shot at getting that prize. So pretty pumped about football being back. I really enjoyed watching it. Man, nothing changed. I think that really is what I learned this weekend. Tom Brady is still regressing. Phillip Rivers has a noodle arm. Adam Gase still can't coach. Bill O'Brien's still a terrible GM and a mediocre coach. I mean, it's amazing how we're like through this pandemic and 7 months later and football comes back and like it just pretty much just rinse and repeat those storylines from last year. Patrick Mahomes really good. Kyler Murray got a lot better. It's the same thing over and over again. But it was great to be able to watch it. And Lily watched some football with me, which was pretty funny because she asked me why the teams kept changing because I was on Red Zone and the colors kept changing. So she was very confused because she was rooting for the red team and then there was no red team. So we got to work on that a little bit. But what can you do?
Almost the best thing I was going to see is I was going to put Sean on blast, and I'll do it anyways. So our buddy Sean Alvarez writes for the website. Great guy. Loves to listen to the podcast. So Sean, you know what's coming. Sean's in Las Vegas. He's been in Vegas for a while, and he's been staying at the D, having a great time. The D is probably the best hotel I'd say on the Strip in Fremont. And he had a really nice NFL parlay going. It was a $50 parlay.
Now I know where you're going.
That son of a gun had the Lions to cover. I don't know how many more times I need to be on this show as a Lions fan telling you the dumbest thing you can do as a bettor is trust the Lions to cover any bet. Never, ever, ever, ever do it. I don't ever play the Lions. I had a couple people text me, hey, did you have the Lions? Did you root against the Lions? Did you lose a lot of money? Did you cry when that happened? No, because it's the Lions. I know what's going to happen. There are 3 franchises in the NFL you never trust. It's the Lions, the Bengals, and the Browns. If you have a nice parlay, a 5 or 6 teamer going, it's going to pay really nice, and you're relying on one of those 3 teams, you get exactly what you're going to get out of that, which is $0 payout. You deserve every bit of that loss for that. I'm sorry. It sounds mean, but you do not trust any of those 3 franchises. And a year, I don't care. If they're playing each other, don't even touch that game. Don't even touch that game.
Thursday night football this week, Cincy and Cleveland.
Yeah, they're in the same division. Yeah,
yeah. The Browns the Lions were up 17 going into the fourth quarter. NFL teams were like 97%, and when you factor in they were facing Mitchell Trubisky, it should have been like 110% win percentage. But man, Mitchell got the golden arm and brought him all the way back. But yeah, the NFL is the best thing I saw this weekend. I was excited to have it back, and college football. A little weird not having fans in there, and the crowd needs to be worked on a little bit. They a little delayed on the boos and the cheers in some cases, but other than that, it was great. And it was fun to have it back and watch it.
I forget what game it was, but someone made the comment that they were a little overzealous on the crowd noises because it was like every 4-yard gain, it was acting like it was a game-winning touchdown with the celebrations. It's like, bro, you got it. It's 2nd and 6. Calm down. You didn't just win the game.
The Tampa New Orleans game, every time there's a Tampa touchback, there was cheering, and every time that there was a New Orleans touchback, there was booing. So the guy was going a little strong on the buttons there. So you got to get a little nuance.
Only Tom Brady was a little strong on the buttons with some of those throws, right?
I would still argue my arm strength is better than his right now.
Oh man, it was nice to see that all come crashing down too. That was just it's just fun. I don't know. There's part of me that wants to see him succeed, and there's part of me that wants it to, because everybody immediately put Tampa Bay in the Super Bowl. Now I'm like, now I want to see this blow up, just destroyed, like just for anarchy. I think it'd be fun.
Yeah, Miami, New York, and Buffalo is a slight downgrade from having to face Carolina, Atlanta, and New Orleans twice a year. Let's just say that if NFC South is significantly better than the AFC East.
Oh yeah. The NFC South is, and then I feel like it's one of those things where whoever ends up finishing fourth, you put them in the NFC North, they're automatically a wild card team. Like there's no the level of talent disparity there is really unfair. Real quick before we get into it, Mike, breaking news not long before we went on air, Honor AP retired supposedly with so they're saying it was an injury. Yeah. There's no real news yet. There's a lot of theories being bandied about. The most common one that I saw, and again, is a theory, I haven't had this confirmed by anyone legit, but is that he hurt a tendon when he was in the Kentucky Derby, and that they noticed it when he came out of it, and they were just trying to see, is it something they can possibly fix with plenty of time, or is it something where he's probably never going to get back to a grade 1 winning level, so let's just retire him because of how much value he has. Either way, very disappointing. Yeah, you and I both loved Honor AP. His Kentucky Derby was over from the start, as Saratoga Slim will tell you. And from there, the fact that he finished fourth, and if he had a hurt tendon to get fourth in the Kentucky Derby from last is pretty damn impressive. So just your quick thoughts on Honor AP retiring.
It's a bummer, man. It probably goes down as one of the bigger disappointments the last couple of years, just because of the hype that surrounded him early on. It's disappointing that we never got to see the best of this horse, and that that the one race where we were kind of expecting to see what Honor AP could really do, would be fully cranked, was going to be that Derby, and then for him to miss the break and then have New York traffic slam into him and never get to see the full scope of the talent of Honor AP is really the biggest disappointment here. I'm glad to hear that he's doing well and that he's going to be able to have a nice stud career, but it's really a shame that we didn't get to see what this horse could do. I remember when Honor AP debuted, and he looked, he looked just dominant. His stride is so beautiful when he gets going. This horse is just, it's just such a picturesque horse from a build of what you want from one of these long 2-turn horses. He covers ground so easily, and it's a shame we're not going to be able to see him into his 4-year-old season, which we may not have anyway, but it's a shame we're not going to even be able to see him at the Breeders' Cup, where I think he would have been a nice price and a horse I definitely would have used. And it's kind of like a Tacitus 2.0, except Tacitus got to run against some bad fields this year and get wins. I mean, you feel like that's the only, it's Honor AP, he got his grade 1, and then we never really got to see that same effort from him again.
So I'll pose a question to you. Bigger overrated disappointment, Honor AP or Instagram? If you don't remember, when he was a 2-year-old, this horse looked like he could have won you would have bet money on to win the Kentucky Derby right then and there. I remember being what's essentially his last victory was the grade 2 best pal of August of his juvenile year. Aaron and I were at Del Mar, and when he came off the turn and you just saw him like a rocket exploding, the rest of the field seemed like they stayed put. We just kept going, wow, and we got so excited. That's the last time that horse won. He was third in the third in the Gotham. He was third in the San Diego Derby. Went to the Pat Day Mile. Was a terrible 8th. He never got better than third after those first 2 races. He ran as a 4-year-old. Honor AP obviously is not going to. So which one of those two is a bigger disappointment?
Instagram to me, because they never even really figured out what that horse was good at. I mean, they tried him at all these different distances. They wanted him on the Derby Trail. He never really was able to pull that off. Then they, like you said, pulled him back to the Pat Day Mile, where he got beat pretty handily. He went off as a favorite a lot and lost a lot. Whereas Honor AP, you feel like, and this is why I've made the Tacitus comparison. He had excuses in a lot of these races, and everyone always was making excuses for him. But he also didn't run that much. I mean, he's got 5-6 career starts, and that's going to be it. So it's not like Instagram, where they kept trying and kept failing with that horse after that just absolutely scintillating win.
Yeah, I'm going to go with you with Instagram, because he was a big disappointment from the start, in the sense that he won the best pal. He looked like, you're like, well, this is why, Larry Best spent $1 million on him, 1.2 to be exact. Yeah. And then he never, they immediately said, well, okay, we're done. And you're like, what do you mean you're done? I think Jared used the analogy, that's like putting your Ferrari in the garage when it's about to be the summer. What do you mean you're done with him? Okay, whatever. We'll see what, at the time, I think he was still with Jerry Hollendorfer. You're like, okay, we'll see what happens. And then he just never started again. It was like, what happened to this Ferrari that we saw, and burned a ton of money. That Pet Day Mile, man, he was just, oh God, that was a bad. Between him and Catalina Cruiser, man, that like I feel like once a year we get one of these horses that you're just like, this horse has all this talent, looks beautiful. At least, like Michael said in the chat, at least Honor AP showed up every time and tried. I mean, in the Kentucky Derby, he's second to last. He gets fourth. Instagram, he doesn't even cross the wire.
Well, that's the thing. You just, with Instagram, you feel like there's a bunch of wasted talent. With Honor AP, you feel like you never got to see the talent. And I think that's a difference. We saw how good Instagram was, and just it wasn't consistent. It wasn't, and it was never replicated. And with Honor AP, you saw how good he was, and every time he tried as hard as he could, and just there were reasons why it didn't work out for him. And I think that if you got to see Honor AP as a 4-year-old with that body frame, he would have filled out and gotten a lot better. And Instagram did not do that. And so to me, I think we're being robbed a little bit in that sense, but we will never know. And now we'll have to look forward to the little Honor AP babies on the track 3 years from now, trying to, what is that? The Santa Anita Breeders' Cup in 3 years. So maybe we'll see an Honor AP return then.
Yeah, let's see, if they're bred in 2021, they'll drop in 2024, they'll be racing age. Because he'll breed in 2021, they'll drop in 2022, and then 2 years after that.
So probably Churchill Downs, since I think that's TBD right now. There you go.
Yeah.
Get your future bets for Honor AP child to win the futurity at Churchill Downs right now.
2024. John Lee's good friend of the program messaged me. He said, but because he brought attention to the fact that even in the announcement on some websites that might, have a racing form that comes out on a daily basis, they did not properly spell his goddamn last. It's a dot
all about these
space,
spaces.
And honestly, I was happy that he didn't win the Kentucky Derby, because I was like, nobody's going to get this right, and magic is just going to like explode. It's gonna be like that GIF where the head just literally explodes on the body. The best thing about this really unfortunate retirement, I don't ever have to see that again until 4 years from now, when his damn babies and someone's going to, go back to the AP Indy, which doesn't have the space. Then there's the Honor AP that has the space. It's going to be a cluster, this is going to be so much worse than when American Pharaoh was misspelled, and then forever every horse racing fan doesn't know the actual proper way to spell the word Pharaoh when it's not related to the horse. So I'm happy for that.
That's why I just put AP whenever it's American Pharaoh. I don't even no space, just AP. Just
AP.
You're good to go.
No dots,
Everyone
no
knows.
space. That's acceptable. Yeah, that's the only time you can do that. On today's show, we're going to be looking at Kentucky Downs, the big races on Saturday. 5 major stakes action, kind of talk about what this means for the Breeders' Cup moving forward. Lots of implications for the divisions. We'll also take a quick look at the Queen's Plate. And if we have time, we'll get into a fan question or two left over from episode 200. Let's get into it, Mike. Riders up. All right, Mike. Wow. What's your name? Yeah. Mike. Your name is Mike. Mike, let's kick things off with the 7th race at Kentucky Downs on Saturday, September 12th. This is going to be the Grade 3 Kentucky Downs Ladies Turf Stakes. Purse of $500,000, which is average for Kentucky Downs. You got a field of 7 fillies and mares, 3 and up, going a mile on the turf course. And this was not part of the late pick 4 sequence. This was the start of the late pick 5. Regal Glory gets the job done at 7-5. Man, Mitchell rode it every time that horse runs. She always tries. You can always trust her to show up and try. Ends up getting worn down by the favorite, but great effort from both Regal Glory and Mitchell Road. What'd you think?
Yeah, they both ran great. It was nice to see Mitchell Road kind of bounce back a little bit. Mitchell Road has been on a little bit of a downswing coming into this race, so it was nice to see the effort here from her, and you kind of get back to those ways where you saw her late in the. It was really her Gulfstream form that you want to go back to and look at, and then she was close. She won at the My Charmer last time, or back in 2019, and then came out and won at Ellis Park to set up the race for this. And when you look at this race and you take a peek at Mitchell Road, you could tell she had a chance of being controlling speed. English Channel is one of those horses, the sires I really like here at Kentucky Downs. And that's kind of how it played out. I mean, she was able to get to the early lead and able to kind of run away from them a little bit and not get too much pressure. Unfortunately for her, this horse sitting right behind her was getting just as good of a trip, and that was Regal Glory, who just really tripped out here. I mean, you had Mitchell Road as a lone speed. 47 and change for the first half mile is pretty pedestrian for horses at this level. Regal Glory got to sit right behind that and was able to pounce and just get by her. And that's really what set up the stretch duel. If you look at the chart that Magic has up here, the 1-2 ran 1-2 the entire way around. And there wasn't even a ton of movement in the back half of this either. Really, you just saw Princess Causeway fall off, who was a longer shot. Secret Message made a little bit of a middle move, but wasn't really able to sustain it. And you saw down the lane that just Mitchell Road and Regal Glory had so much left when they were kind of closing down to the final furlong here, and it became a match race. And fortunately for me, Regal Glory was able to get on by.
A horse that I think obviously Regal Glory is a favorite. We like her going into this. Mitchell Road, I already sang her praises. Tappa Today is an interesting horse that if she wasn't with Chad Brown, I think I'd be more excited about than I am the way she is. And the only reason I say that is because with Chad Brown, if they've made 9 starts, 8 of them on turf, by this point you'd expect if it's going to be a good Chad Brown horse, she's already won at least one stakes race. She got second in the Risk Averse. She was third in the Swanee River earlier this year, fourth in the Matchmaker at Monmouth before getting third. Her buyers have improved just a tiny bit, pretty much every start. She's a very lightly raced 5-year-old. She only got 9 starts, but she's very good at hitting the board and being competitive in these spots. I just don't know, because it's Chad Brown and we talked about before, like his horses, when they hit a ceiling, like there's no, you kind of know when they've got that ceiling. And I feel like she might about be there. Is she just kind of stuck to being an underneath play when you come to these big races like this?
Yeah, I think so. And I mean, you put it well there. I think we're really close to her ceiling. I'm not sure that she's going to be able to get into the high 90s, low 100 buyers, which she's going to need to do to be able to eventually win large stakes races. And even if you look back at the start of her career, I mean, we're talking about 2018 here when Chad Brown debuted her. He debuted her at Gulfstream Park in March, which is at the Champions Meet. So all right there kind of gives you an idea of what he originally thought of this horse. Then sends the horse to Monmouth for the summer before going to Saratoga. That's just not generally where Chad Brown's top string is. So you get a good idea of what Chad Brown thought of this horse before the layoff. And then after the layoff, comes back while the championship meet is running and debuts at Tampa. So again, you look at this and you say, okay, he's kind of avoiding the top tier horses that are running at the time, and it's these and Tappa Today consistently been with his quote unquote second string or practice squad, however you want to put it, right? So the fact that he didn't debut this horse at Gulfstream during championships meet, or didn't run it at Saratoga, it was choosing to run it at Tampa, it kind of tells you the upside that he felt the horse had. Now, the fact of the matter is he's put him in multiple graded stakes and then into the Kentucky Downs Lady Turf. I mean, he's now trying to reach with this horse. So you got to think that he saw something different off that layoff. So I'm going to give this horse maybe one more shot to improve, but I think we're really close to the ceiling here.
So this horse, I'm doing the math real quick. 7 starts on turf, less than firm, 5 wins, 2 seconds, Regal Glory.
Yeah.
So you want to talk about Chad Brown horse that does do well, man. I mean, you get a cut in the ground. And so the reason I bring that up is looking forward. She's 4 years old. It looks like she's best going a mile, like at her max. She's gone a mile and an eighth, mile and a 16th. Mile and a 16th, she won. It was a Lake Placid grade 2 last year. The QE2 Cup last year, way too difficult for a grade 1. Do you treat her like Rushing Fall, where you send her to Keeneland and then you back off for the year, or do you try and go to the Breeders' Cup with her? And if you do, it's got to be the mile at this point, right?
Yeah, I mean, man, I'm not sure. I'm not sure. I don't know off the top of my head who Paul Pompa has in his stable, and he's going to be the one who's probably making this decision. But I wouldn't be shocked if you look at the level of races that this horse is running, and then you take into account the fact that it likes to rain in Kentucky during November, every now and then, it might not be a bad idea to at least bring the horse out, because, like you said, this horse excels over the soft going. Now the problem is that there's a lot of really good horses in that mile already. That's going to be an awfully tough race to win, and you're not going to trip out like this for Regal Glory. And to be honest, I think this is probably the best possible mile for Regal Glory here, going on the Kentucky Downs surface with a little bit of cut in the ground, 1-turn mile around the turf for a horse that wants to be close to the lead. I mean, it really just sets up well for a horse that wants to get between a mile and a mile and 16th, and that seems exactly what Regal Glory wants to get. So maybe they send her, maybe they don't. I won't be playing her if they do. This is a horse that I would fade in grade 1 company next time out, especially over firm turf.
Yeah, I think because looking at Chad Brown's stable, knowing what he has, especially because he seems to be still looking to send almost all of his best horses at the turf mile, I wouldn't send. I'd just take a break, because I don't think, unless you think she's going to beat Raging Bull, she's going to beat Uni if she still shows up with anything. Rock, I don't know what they're going to do if Rock Emperor is going to go to a mile or go to the Breeders' Cup turf, but there's plenty. And then you got to consider who they's coming over from Europe. Is Mitchell Road going to show up there and challenge for the pace? There's too many factors. Paul Pompa Jr., I looked up, he's got 3 grade 3 wins now this year. Country Grammar is one of his horses, and then he also has Turned Aside. If she shows up, I would say it's because the owner really pushed for it. He's had 2 horses hit the board in Breeders' Cups before, none of them before 2010. So it's an interesting point, though, you bring up about the owner. But one horse I do want to talk about. Is there anything else you wanted to bring up about this race?
It depends who you want to talk about. Go ahead.
Well, I was going to move to the next race.
Oh, yeah. Do it. Let's go.
Let's go. Because speaking of the Breeders' Cup Mile, a horse that finished second in it last year, My Heart horse. Oh my God, got Stormy. Oh, this this brought so much joy to my heart on Saturday, Mike. She cuts back to sprinting for the first time in her career. Did okay. Grade 3 Kentucky Downs Lady Sprint Stakes, $500,000 purse. She was the 9-5 favorite. You and I both, this is what started the late pick 4 sequence. You and I both said we're using her defensively because we didn't like the price. Kind of glad we used her defensively because you wouldn't have hit the ticket. I wouldn't have gone 3 for 4 without this. Now, I definitely didn't use winning envelope. I can't remember if you did, but man, she looked fantastic. And I think, Mike, I think we figured out this is what she needs to do for the rest of the year, right?
Well, I mean, it's interesting. Again, this is one of those where the Kentucky Downs turf course really played into her hands. I mean, this 6.5 furlongs turf sprint is just perfect for her against this group, right? I mean, she wants to go a mile. You're going really 7.25 furlongs if you factor in the ups and downs, the turns and everything at Kentucky Downs. So for her, this is like the exact trip she would want, and she looked dominant here. She looked great, and it was funny because I said on the podcast, this is my only must-use horse. But I'm going to must use her defensively because I do want to make sure I don't blow this. And this was a string of 5 straight must use wins for me that we rambled off of the late pick 5 here, which is awfully fun. But man, she looked back to Got Stormy, and now you kind of look back and we mentioned this after the race. She was definitely pace benefited by the last at Saratoga that she ran in. However, this more validates that last race by being able to be close to the lead and then put this type of effort forward. So I'm less concerned about her long-term longevity. I think you're going to see her in the mile, and I think she's got a shot. I mean, if she's able to replicate that Saratoga race, and we say that's not a fluke, and that now is backed up with more information, I think that Got Stormy's got a legit shot in the mile, and I think you might get a price on her.
So you're actually not going to see her in the mile. You're going to see her in the Breeders' Cup Turf Sprint. Mark Cassidy said after the race that he was thinking maybe he would send her to the Breeders' Cup Turf Sprint. He's going to use this as a measuring gauge, and he said he thinks that she can handle it. That's going to be interesting because that is not a 6.5 furlong. It's not a 7.25 furlong race. That is a much shorter spot. So you're going to have, if you're going to play Got Stormy in that spot, you have to trust that she has a strong enough kick left at age 5 with 24 starts on her belt that she can still kick when necessary because those horses are going to be going a lot faster than 22-2, 46-1, 109-2 for 6 furlongs. It's going to be so much faster than that for her. Listen, Mark Cassidy knows better than I do. He's handled this. He's done things with this horse before where we've gone, is that really the smart thing? And it seems to work out more often than not. So I'm going to begrudgingly say, okay, let's see what happens. But the way that everything else is lining up with the other horses aiming for the sprint, I don't know that I'd play her.
Yeah, she's probably tossing the sprint for me. It's just, they're going to fly. We're talking 20s, maybe low 21s. And then we're going to see the 44 come up on the board. And that's 10 lengths difference from what she ran today, right? 46-1 is about 11 lengths difference in a flat 44. Got Stormy 11 lengths back going 5 furlongs is not a position I would want to ever have her in. And realistically, they go 44-2, let's say. And she can go, 45-4, so she's 6 lengths off the pace. I'm really not sure I want Got Stormy trying to close 6 lengths against horses that are better than her at closing those last 6 lengths in the last quarter of a mile of a turf sprint race. It's what they do. That's their thing.
Yeah, it's almost like a rock and a hard place. You're like, I don't know, she can't really handle the mile. Not really going to handle the mile so much. I mean, if War of Will is going there too. I mean, there's so many great horses that are going to the mile just in America. We'll have to see what happens. I mean, there is precedent from a mare winning, right? Belvoir Bay won this race last year when it was Santa Anita. So, which I think did you use her?
No, I had Orb. No, okay. Freaking
the horse that keeps getting second in that race.
Yeah, both Peter Millers. I used the wrong one.
Winning envelope was a bit of a surprise for me. I mean, there's a really nice kick to come from last and get second like that. 2 horses that I used into Mystic Lady Lawyer, I thought they both did really well. Lady Lawyer I thought was a little hampered by being stuck outside, but she ran pretty well. Were there any horses out of this race that you're looking to use moving forward?
Not really. I think Into Mystic is still interesting to me. Winning envelope ran a big race. It'll be interesting to see where she comes back as well. Coming out of Canterbury too. I mean, you look at the top 3 finishers. It's like Saratoga, Canterbury, Ellis Park. I mean, it's just an interesting 1, 2, 3. But that's what you kind of get here at Kentucky Downs. For me, I'm not going to use. I wouldn't. Yeah, I'm not really interested in any of these horses coming back. I mean, we'll see who they end up facing, but these aren't your best turf sprinters. And I think that Got Stormy is not a horse I want turf sprinting in the future.
Trying to see here with Lady Lawyer. That was the Chad Brown horse that I on the show. I said there's going to be at least 1 scratch and 2 scratches and she'll make it. And I was right about that. But so her first 2 career buyers when she comes to America, 88, She only goes to a 90. So again, we're looking at is this a Chad Brown thing? I don't know. Blinkers off. They talked about her briefly and brought up the fact Chad Brown is not great turf sprinting. That's not where he does his best work on the turf. So Lady Lawyer, this is, I think you got another Chad Brown horse that, maybe she gets a little later in her 4-year-old season here, but I think low 90 is going to be about her ceiling too.
Yeah, and you think about how Chad Brown's had success. It's with a slow pace up front. And he has a horse with a massive turn of foot in the back, and these longer turf races and turf sprinting. You got to train some speed into him, and that's just something that Chad Brown doesn't always do very well. And if you look at Lady Lawyer here, broke 11th, was 11th at the start, was 10th a quarter of the mile away in, half mile 9th. Had a lot of work to do coming into a pace that wasn't all that fast for this distance.
Mm-hmm. I was at least happy they Stormy got the win over a turf that was less than firm, because Cassie kept saying how she needs the firm turf to basically needs to be like pavement for her to be able to handle running on it. But she gets the job done. We'll see what happens. I would assume that he's just going to train her towards the Breeders' Cup Turf Sprint at this point. We'll move on to a race that you and I both, we definitely nailed this one, Mike. Not graded, but the Kentucky Downs Juvenile Turf Sprint Stakes is a $500,000 purse for the third time in as many years that this race has existed. Wesley Ward won it. Big surprise? Not really. Outador gets the job done as your 9-5 favorite. That was your single. I didn't have the balls to single between the two Ward horses, so hats off to you for that one. I went Outador and Fauci, both very clearly better than the rest of this field. We expected that. Outador, though, I thought because he got the first jump on Fauci, when I saw that, I was like, shit, there it goes. Outador is going to win this one. And you got your single home. Talk about it.
Man, he looked good, didn't he? I mean, that looked like a very good turf sprinter. I was really impressed with Outador here, and I feel bad for Fauci running into Golden Pal, who's probably the best turf sprinter we've seen so far in this division, and then Outador, who runs so well today. But we talked about this on the show about why I singled this horse, and we've talked about Chad Brown showing that ceiling. Well, if this is Fauci's fourth start, we kind of got to the point where we knew where Fauci's limit was here, and he needed to take a big time step forward off an 80 buyer in the Skidmore to be able to really improve the amount I thought Outador could improve here, and Outador just took a leap here. I mean, he looked, when you turned for home and you started to see that turn of foot out of Outador, it was over. You knew that this horse was not losing that race. So that felt good as someone singled him. But man, I was really impressed with Outador here. And Outwork is one of those sires I've talked about a little bit on the show that, he had a ton of talent, and just for whatever reason, things didn't go the way that they planned, ran in the Derby and never seen again. But we're seeing the first crop here. And this was a very impressive winner first time out. I thought it was a very professional winner first time out. I thought you saw that translate here second time out, where you saw this horse take a big time step forward. And I think this horse is going to be dangerous moving forward. I'm not sure it's at Golden Pal level, but I wouldn't throw either of them out. If we're sitting in the Breeders' Cup, you got to pick between the two. Let's just put it that way. I wouldn't have the balls to single either Outador or Golden Pal in that spot.
I'm curious to see what Wesley Ward does with them moving forward. He said that as soon as both Irad Ortiz got off of Outador and Gaffleon got off of Fauci, they both said, you need to send this horse longer, that he wants longer. And it kind of makes sense, right? Because this is a 6.5 furlong we just talked about with the last race. When that was 6.5, you had a horse that was probably best in a mile really succeeding. So that kind of hints that, these horses, these two especially, could really handle stretching out. I would say if Wesley Ward's going to send them off to try and do 2 turns on turf for their next starts to get them into the Breeders' Cup, if they both do well, I'd say you're going to see them go in the Breeders' Cup Juvenile Turf, and he's going to send Golden Pal, his best turf sprinter, into the turf sprint and try and win it. It was a little tough last year for him because he had 4-wheel drive, he had Kamari. This time he won't have to pick between them, right?
Yeah, I'm just going to throw it out there too. I wouldn't be shocked if we see Outador at some point on the dirt. If he does want more distance, and Outwork was, like I said, a Derby horse. Uncle Mo was the grandsire here. The horse has some pedigree to be able to go over the dirt. Ran a bullet over Keeneland's dirt course 2 back. Maybe this is a horse that you end up seeing in the Breeders' Cup Juvenile, not the Breeders' Cup Juvenile Turf, depending on where they decide to go with this horse. But I think Outador is loaded with talent, and they've got a lot of different options where they want to go. First career buyer, 77, comes back here, runs an 82. I think there's still upside for this horse. I'm excited to see what Outador can do long term. Fauci ran well. For me, outside of those two, there just really wasn't that much in here. I thought those were clearly the best horses, and it played out that way too. I mean, they had a clear 3.5 lengths on the rest of the field. Clearly the top 1, 2 here are the ones you want. And unfortunately, we talked about Boss Bear a little bit, which was the maker horse that didn't run well, that ended up here and kind of ended up going off at 20-1 with size up. Fortunately, that horse didn't run very well either. So I'm kind of not really looking to play that one back either. I think that's pretty much over there. So for me, really, it was just Outador and Fauci out of here that I want.
Did you get nervous at all? Real quick, then we'll move on. County final was an Asmussen horse without Santana, which was an angle you talked about that you were starting to like on the turf. He opened as the favorite, and for the longest time, he was right there. I think it was right at the very end when the horses went off, his odds slipped underneath because he and Outdoor and Fauci were right there for favoritism. Did that make you nervous at all?
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, it did. I didn't expect him to take that much money. Last time out was reigned off the turf, was able to win. Career debut was winning on the turf. And just so we can update the stats now, Santana 0 for 25 at Kentucky Downs. Asmussen 1 for 24 in that, or 1 for 21. That win came with Rosario aboard. So it just let's just say my fade Asmussen and Santana thing when they're at big tracks is still working out pretty well, especially on the turf. Specifically on the turf, I should say that I do like playing them on the dirt, but on the turf, Asmussen Santana will be an auto chuck for me both Tuesday and Wednesday. I don't care what horse they're on at this point.
Speaking of horses that should not make your auto chuck list, if he keeps running after this year and Arklow comes back to Kentucky Downs next year, do not let me chuck this horse because man, this is what knocked me out. You did warn me. This is what knocked me out of the pick four sequence. You had him in the grade 3 $1 million Calumet Farm Kentucky Turf Cup Stakes. This was race 10 on Saturday, Kentucky Downs. Zulu Alpha was a 4-5 favorite, but I'll be honest, when I saw how the turf was playing, I was like, God, he likes to come from way back. I don't know if he's going to be able to handle this so much. It's too late. My ticket was punched. I was like, I'll just live with what happens. Arklow, man, 1 1/4 length victory. He looked strong. He took the lead, and once he had the lead, you kind of knew there was nobody's catching him. Red Knight ran pretty well to get second there, but Arklow, God, he loves Kentucky Downs. He won this race in 2018. He was second to Zulu Alpha last year. Talk to me about Arklow.
I loved the tactics here. I mean, Giroux put this horse in play a lot earlier than you usually see this horse close. I mean, if you look at the last 4 races, he was never within more than 4 lengths of the lead at a half mile into the race. And in this case, he was up close and he was able to pounce. There wasn't that fast of a pace, but I think Giroux, who's one of the top jockeys specifically at Kentucky Downs, he's ridden there multiple years and really understands the course well. He made it so that Arklow had a chance to really win this race. And when Arklow took control of the top of the stretch, you kind of knew no one was going to come and get him. I mean, Red Knight put a good effort in there, and Zulu Alpha obviously was charging. But man, when you give a horse that big of a jump, and you see that funky turf course where you're going downhill and then you're going uphill to the finish line, it's not easy to close into that when the turf is a little softer. And Arklow is someone who likes this course, and like I said, Drew put him into a great spot. And I thought this was a great effort from Arklow. I was Arklow and Zulu Alpha, and then I spread a little bit underneath that, but those were my must uses. And I felt like you kind of had to include Arklow because of the ticket or because of the price. I mean, you got 6 to 1 on this horse. I thought that was what was a little crazy. And when we were on the show, the reason I was trying to beat Zulu Alpha is I thought the horse would be overbet. That's to me exactly what happened here. You got a shot, a 4-5 favorite that was the deserving favorite, but should have been closer to 7-5 to 8-5 in my mind. And that meant you had value everywhere else, including your eventual winner, Arklow, who got home at about 5.8 to 1.
I'm not going to, I was happy with my ticket construction because I thought that I was very confident in Zulu Alpha. He's come back to a track where he just won this race last year, and he seemed like he was still at the top of his game. And I was hoping for a price in the last, which we'll get to in a second. Didn't get that to happen, but I'm at least going to look back on this and say I thought that my ticket construction was definitely better than it has been in the past. So even though it didn't work out this time, just because I was looking for prices in 2 legs, and I thought for sure in the middle 2 you weren't going to get much of a price. A big reason that this worked for Arklow, he added blinkers for the first time. First time blinkers. He's more than halfway through his 6-year-old season. He's had 28 starts, and then Brad Cox goes, you know what he needs? He needs blinkers. We're going to throw some blinkers on. and that's what happened with him. Cox said, plus that he's got a good form over, so ground with some cut in it. But also Brad Cox, don't use the word juice when you're talking about how a horse did well. He used it. His quote is, he definitely likes a little juice in the ground. I get what you're trying to say, buddy, but that's like why Mike and I don't say breakdown on this show unless we really can't help it. So don't do that.
Pick your words wisely.
Yeah, but hey, the blinkers worked. I'd be curious to see if they keep him on him because you've talked about this. Sometimes you throw the blinkers on to inject some speed in them, and then you take it back off because you were just trying to teach the horse something new. So we'll be curious to see what happens with training wise if he trains with blinkers on, if they decide they want to keep it with him, or if Cox thinks that did the job.
Yeah, I mean, Cox is 30% first blink, 32% blinkers on. So he does use the blinkers on and off. He's got 63 efforts with blinkers on, just 61 first-time blinkers. So only 2 times. It wasn't the first time he put them on. So I'd be surprised if he takes them off based on that stat. You'd assume that this is a forward-thinking move. 100 buyer for Arklow goes back to some of those numbers you saw. And 100 buyer, I think, at Kentucky Downs is also higher than some other places just because of the uphill slope toward the end of the track. Ran a 94 in this race last year, so a nice improvement there. You know, we talked about this a little bit. I really do think that you're going to see some horses do very well when they disperse from Kentucky Downs this year. I think one of the angles I'm going to be playing is horses that ran 3rd or 4th at Kentucky Downs that closed into the pace a little bit back at other tracks that are not favoring speed. Because I think the last couple of days specifically, it was really hard to close significant ground. You could win from off the lead, but you weren't winning from 8th or 9th in most cases. Rosario did it a couple times, but he's a Superman closer. So I think that's maybe the more bucking the trend than anything else. So horses, you know, like Zulu Alpha here, I think has a chance. Red Knight, I think, ran really big here. I know Michael mentioned, do you want to play him next out? That's one, if I can get a price, I'm definitely playing next out. I was surprised he went off at 4.5 to 1. He was the only other horse that really got bet in this spot. I ended up going off the second favorite, which I thought was absolutely crazy. I mean, really, Arklow was the horse that injected value into this whole sequence, which is crazy to think at 6 to 1. But because you had all that money coming in Red Knight, and because Zulu Alpha was so over singled, getting Arklow home made a big difference in the eventual payouts for both the pick 4 and the pick 5 that we hit.
Yeah, and I'm glad you brought that up because I was going to do it as well. Bill Mott, 10% with horses off of a layoff of at least 180 days, 16% second off. So you definitely see that improvement, and he's just known as a trainer, to kind of old school, getting them back into it. So
run him into shape.
Run him into shape. Yeah, I'm just not sure after seeing that he beat Zulu Alpha, who was a 4 to 5 favorite, and Red Knight was the second favorite. I don't know how much of a price you're going to get unless you go somewhere like the Breeders' Cup, which at that point,
You're probably not playing him anyway. Yeah.
I'm not gonna not at the Breeders' Cup turf, no. So, but hey, listen, great job for you. You stuck to your guns. You called out that Zulu Alpha could be beat, and you were correct, and you got paid for it. We'll move off to the 4th and final leg of the late pick 4 sequence, race 11 on the card. I got to pull up the card here. The Grade 3 $700,000 Run Happy Turf Sprint Stakes. 6 furlongs on the turf. Field of 11 here. This is Breeders' Cup winning for the Turf Sprint. Imprimis, I don't know how. I'm going to stick with Imprimis now because I've heard it said that way enough that I'm starting to think that that's correct.
Let's
3
do
to 1, 3 to 1 favorite. Man, he anybody who stuck with him after the Troy and felt that he got robbed. If you stuck with him here, man, you deserve to get paid and have your faith rewarded. Was the tepid, I think Totally Boss was the favorite initially going into this, and Primus got bet way down. He looked great. I really love that and I know he had the outside position. I really love how he fought to get there because if you watch Zulu Alpha, it was really hard to close over the middle of that track. And this horse was pushing past those other two to his inside. Really impressive. What did you think?
I love Imprimis. I just love this horse. I singled this horse on Travers Day and was devastated. It was the right take. It was the right DQ. And this is one of those things where it's like, you picked the right horse. I was correct in singling Imprimis, but man, it sucks when he comes down, even though it was also the correct DQ. It was nice to see him come back and run this race. This horse loves the soft going. I was at Pimlico on Preakness Day when Justify won. He ran a career best 103 buyer over that soft going, and that was a bog that day. And by this point in the card, there's quite a bit of rain. They'd already canceled the next day's card by this point in the card. So the turf course has already taken on quite a bit of rain, and Imprimis loved every bit of that cut in the ground. This is just one of those horses where you really have to respect it anytime we're turf sprinting. And we talked about this a little bit, and this is interesting to me, so I'm just going to wax poetic a little bit here. But we talked about the difference between going 5 and 5.5 and 6. And this is a horse that wants that added distance. And that's why I felt this track played right into his hands going the 6 furlongs, which is really more like that 6.5. You look at Totally Boss at 5.5 last time with Leinster. I think that's more of his specialty distance, maybe even down to the 5. So you really got to look at who's playing where and the distance in here. And I think a half furlong makes a monster difference. And so understanding the lengths that we're turf sprinting, be it 5, 5.5, or 6, I think plays a key role in who you end up with here. And Imprimis wanted every bit of that extra ground and enjoyed the cut in the turf. So he was able to just show up and roll on by. I mean, this is the fun part about this division. I love the turf sprint division because I could make a case for so many of these freaking horses is why they're the ones that are going to run that race today. And it's fun because you have horses like, Front Run the Fed, who I didn't use originally on my ticket, and then we substituted in after you talked about it. Bound for Nowhere scratched out of this, or else Bound for Nowhere would have been a price. That was the 12th horse here.
Mm-hmm.
Totally Boss came in here, and after a monster effort, it goes out of 4-1 and runs 7th in here after just missing to another one that I love. I'll get the name of in a second here. To Leinster, who I think is another one of those great sprinters. Although Leinster really is that 5.5 type guy. He doesn't really want to go to 6. So it's really interesting to see where they end up and how they end up. And I'm excited for this turf sprint in the Breeders' Cup specifically because it's a great place to look for a price. And no one should be lower than 2-1. I mean, you should be able to get a price no matter what direction you take.
I'm going to look it up real quick because I know it changes based off. So 5.5 furlongs is what the distance is going to be at Keeneland for the turf sprint. So Got Stormy is going to have to cut back by at least a furlong. And Primus is going to have to cut back by a half. She's
not beating these horses. The ones that we're talking about, she's not beating these ones. Like maybe was your Australinka? Maybe if she shows up, because she's a true turf sprinter. Maybe Joey Olympica could compete in this level. But yeah. I mean, just because their skill set is so different. God Stormy's skill set is just not to be a turf sprinter. If anyone right now can get some future money down on God Stormy winning the turf sprint, I am talking her into the winner's circle a month before this freaking race goes off. But I mean, do you really want to take her against Imprimis and Totally Boss and Leinster? And I mean, you're going to have a couple Pete Millers in there that have a ton of speed. And man, it's just a tall task.
Well, and we talk about it all the time. We love this division. This exact conversation is why I wanted to be alive to all and why I was so I got a single Zulu Alpha because I want to spread here because I was a neck away from getting bombarded at 19-1. It's not a horse that we even remotely came close to discussing on the podcast last week. He dead heats with Front Run the Fed for a second and they're neck behind Imprimis. I was neck away from getting a 19.3-1 home because this is just such a loaded division. It's so tough.
Yeah, I mean, I've started to look back at some of the stats over the last 6 months or so that I've been keeping around. I've been trying to dial in what races I'm best at. I'm obviously better at multi-race bets, pick 4s and pick 5s, but now I'm trying to dial in where my biggest edges seem to be. And man, it's not even close. Turf sprinting is clearly my best game. And so it's where I'm most of my singles. It's where I've had the most success from an ROI perspective. And so for me, it's one of those things where now I'm trying to dial in even more, but it's fun for this to be something that we're good at because man, like you said, a neck from Bombard and you can get prices home in these races. You look at Belvoir Bay last year in the Breeders' Cup. If you can go 1 or 2 deep in these legs and you're right, man, it makes it a lot easier because these are big fields that are competitive usually. And so it's fun when you can start nailing these turf sprints.
I had a question before we leave Kentucky Downs real quick from Dennis who's watching live. Dennis, thank you. Micromagic, correct me if I'm wrong. Normally I like playing speed coming from Kentucky Downs, but this year is the first year I think you need to play closers coming from Kentucky Downs. This is a great point. We still have a couple days left in the meet for Kentucky Downs, but we like to look ahead and say, okay, this is a very specific kind of style in the meet here. What do you like to look for moving forward? So based off Dennis's question, are you looking to play more closers coming out of this meet?
I am specifically from this last weekend. The first couple of days, it felt a little more fair to me, if that makes sense. So I almost think you need to check what days the races occurred on. Another way you could do that, you can always, if you're using DRF PPs, you can pull up the chart and you can see if any closers were able to close or not. And if someone did and no one else did, then that probably tells you that horse is going to take a step forward. I mean, honestly, these purses, and this is what happened last year, they bring the best horses together. And so when these best horses then disperse, you see some pretty nice prices at places that you shouldn't see them at, and you can expect steps forward. I also mentioned this earlier. I tend to think the buyers are too low at this track. I don't think that you necessarily see an equal buyer at Kentucky Downs versus what you see at Saratoga. And this is a personal opinion. I have no facts to back this, but Arklow's 94 last year in that race was not really a 94 in my eyes. He ran significantly better than that, but the number came back in 94. And, I'll scroll back to Arklow real quick. So bear with me for a second. But if you then look at what Arklow did coming out of that race, Arklow runs a 94 and comes back out to a 105 buyer career best and runs 100 right after that. Prior to that race, ran 104, 100, 103. So that race is a clear outlier and still ran second to Zulu Alpha in it. So to me, that validates that a lot of these buyers might come back a little soft, and that means that you can almost project improvement into wherever they go. And it also may allow you to give a little bit better of a price because their buyers may not be on par for everybody else.
And I think part of that is because you're only there for 1 week and it's such a funky course. You can't compare this to the turf at Churchill or at Keeneland. So trying to figure out what is going to be the track variant, trying to measure all the little intricacies of something like this, I think it's tough. So I'm with Mike. I think you bring up a good point that just if you see someone's Kentucky Down has a buyer of use Arcos in 94, it was a grade 1 worth $1 million, or I'm sorry, a grade 3 worth $1 million. Bump that up a little bit because it probably isn't going to make sense, but that's a good point.
You look at the class around it. And on top of that, I mean, we're just looking at a smaller sample size. Think about how many races have been run in the history of Kentucky Downs versus the number of races at Churchill Downs. The sample size to be able to create accurate numbers is just so much bigger that you have all these different conditions that at some point a race has been run at Churchill Downs, the exact same conditions that they will run next time they run that race. Kentucky Downs, I don't know if there's ever been a race run like the 11th at 6 furlongs with that much rain in the track where they've already canceled the next day, where you have winds. Like that may have never happened before, which makes it even harder to come up with an accurate number.
I'm with you. Yeah, it just looked like such a bog by the end of that day. One last race to talk about. We're going to leave Kentucky Downs, head up north to Woodbine for the $1 million Queen's Plate. And it's usually a race I'm very excited to talk about. And I'll tell you, I am not excited to talk about it this year because this is one of those races that I texted the group after it was over. I was like, it's just like the goddamn Kentucky Derby. But like the Canadian version of the Kentucky Derby isn't supposed to play out the same way on the track. Like it worked out okay for me last year when Flavien Prat won both of them. In this case, you have a horse that got a relatively easy lead at longer odds, and the best horses just really, didn't get the job done for whatever reason. God, this race is going to piss me off to talk about, but just because Mighty Heart was a horse that didn't even look that great coming into this spot, but because he got an easy lead at a mile and a quarter. I will say, compared to the Kentucky Derby, the Queen's Plate, there's usually 2-3 horses tops that you have any confidence can handle the mile and a quarter distance. The Canadian bred program just isn't, because they're restricted, you have those issues. Mighty Heart was not somebody that I thought was able to handle this stretch out in distance, but he gets the job done. Really cool that Daisuke Fukumoto, the young rider at Woodbine, this is his first time riding in the Queen's Plate, and then he gets the job done on the front end. So kudos to him. Let's talk about it, Mike. What do you think about the Queen's Plate?
I mean, it was just... Yeah, it was a race. They went around in a circle. I had the 14 Chishmish's War.
Tecumseh's War.
Tecumseh's War. There it is. That was close. I had the Tecumseh's War here, and I sat the perfect trip and then quit. Honestly, the takeaways here, Belichick ran a monster race. If you're looking at the chart that Magic has up, really 1, 2, 3, 4. I mean, the horses that finished first, third, and fourth were pretty much 1, 2, 3 the entire race. And one horse closed. That was Belichick, although he was a Canadian mile. He was about 8 meters. Is that right? Something like that. Do we do meters for this? He was a few meters back of the winner, Mighty Heart. So I'm not sure if he was just passing other horses that were slowing down because he wasn't making too much ground up. He was about 7.5 lengths back when it was all said and done. So Belichick would be the one I'd be interested in moving forward if I can get a price again. He was 26-1 in this spot. I'd want another price. I wanted around 15-1 or so. But I do think based on the way that this chart shows, if they're going a longer distance again, Belichick's an interesting one to me.
It was an interesting running style for him because he's someone that I had, he's been sitting in my virtual stable since before our draft because I was like, well, this could be, an interesting horse. He's named after, of course, Bill Belichick. Is that
what he's named after?
Yeah, maybe.
No idea.
The great connections up there, and it's like I was at the very least he's on my radar for the Queen's Plate, and then he didn't even show up until July 4th. That was his first ever race. He was going 7 furlongs. Didn't really work out there. Goes to 1 mile and 1/8, and he was leading in the stretch and hung and got past. Here, the not Simon Callahan. I was going to say it's Callahan, but the other Callahan, the jockey, took him way back and just said, we'll see what we can do from there. It was a smarter tactic, especially because if you're confident he's going to be able to handle the distance, you just got to get a clean trip around those horses. Tecumseh's War I thought ran great. Clayton, he did a great job. He's always a strong fighter. Curlin's Voyage kind of ticked me off, and I had a bad feeling that this might happen when we literally analyzed the trip that she got in the Woodbine Oaks on this show and went frame by frame to talk about why Patrick Husbands is the reason she won that. She didn't draw the rail. She drew 10th, and she got stuck going wide in the first turn. And I thought, well,
that's that.
Shit.
Yeah. That's why trip handicapping matters. I mean, when you watch that back, we were complimenting Patrick Husbands, but what it also told you is this was not a good favorite. Like that, right? Like it's a little bit of both.
Yeah, so she's your 5-2 favorite, doesn't get the job done. I don't know. This is such a mess. I just had vibes of the Kentucky Derby. The way I felt after this race, I was like, I don't want to talk about this race.
All right, we don't have to talk anymore about it.
We don't have to talk about it. That's fine. Listen, the Queen's Plate, it was a race that happened, and we'll move on. All right, Mike, that's going to wrap things up for the Kentucky Downs show. I do have one quick question, since I did say I was going to bring it up. I'll pull it up here. If you have any questions, by the way, just send an email to contact@racingdudes.com. At least for now, that's going to be where we take any of your future questions. You can also send it to Mike and I in a tweet, a DM. Question from Ronald Tang. Twice per week, the highlight of my drive after work. Thanks, Ronald. Glad to hear that you're working and you can drive to it too. That's great.
Yeah, seriously.
Question: what is the process behind capping 2-year-old maiden races, and how do you cap those races in the slop? Mike, take it away. I know what your answer to the first one is going to be, but the second one will be interesting.
Yeah, blind guesses. No. How do I cap 2-year-old maiden races? First off, I like to look at the standing fee of the sire and the sales price if they do sell. I'm big believer in percentages, but specifically I like to couple percentages together. So if a trainer is 18% first out, but they are 6% debuting over a mile, I'm going to not use that horse. I'm going to look for horses or trainers that have about a better percentage first out over a mile versus the lower percentage as the first out overall. I'm looking for things that they do specifically well when I'm looking at 2-year-old races. And a lot of times those percentages can fall into that. I'm not a big workout believer, except when it comes to 2-year-olds, specifically first time out in the maiden races. So I do look quite a bit at the workouts there. I'm looking for horses that run 12s or better. So, 3 furlong work for 36 seconds. I will give horses about a second break if they're coming out of a gate. So I 49-second gate work I still like. I will look at who else they are working against. So I think the clocker reports can be very helpful at places like Saratoga and Del Mar. It gives you an idea of not only who the horses are working against, but how much they were being asked and who rode them in the warning. So I think that can be pretty helpful. Also, I think a big thing is sires. Look, there's some sires that just win early sires. It's like City Zip is a horse. It's a win early sire. Insta Mischief's a win early sire. Violence has been a win early sire. Just horses that consistently produce horses that win early on in their career. Again, if you're using DRF, the formulator, you can click on the sire or the mare, the sire or the dam, and either one will be able to show you how those horses do with 2-year-olds or first time starters, things like that. So that's good information you can get. How do I handicap them on the slop? That is to me all just feel. It's looking at, and it's not a great answer, but it's the truth. I've handicapped so many of these races. I know what sires do well on what sloppy tracks, and I know if you have I'm going to go back to City Zip, who's one of my favorite win early sires. Man, if City Zip's going over the mud, dangerous at Saratoga. Just watch out because those horses seem to take to that track very well. Horses like even Outwork, horses like the Malibu Moon, another good win early mud sire. So, and that's Outador and Fauci's sires. Ironically, 2 very good 2-year-olds. Constitution, another one. So a lot of it is understanding the pedigree and understanding how horses. What type of foals those horses produce, and whether or not it's a horse that wins early or a horse that kind of works itself into its conditioning. Because you do see some horses just not mature at 3 and 4, but they're really mature at 2, and that's the horses that you're kind of consistently looking for in those 2-year-old races.
So one thing that I do, and this is, I'll hopefully DRF doesn't care that we're doing this. A, this is a race that passed, but B, we're promoting the product. Look at then we're not going to get anything from this for DRF. But if you use a formulator, here's one of the things you can do. So for Outador, his sire report for Outwork, 2-year-old first time starter. This is his first crop, so that's all you're going to see from him. But you get a clue 11% here, and then it tells you here's what the sires are averaging. If you want to know, how is his horses doing? He's got one that finished 3rd. Again, this isn't a great example because it's only 1 year of sample size. If you have a horse, even Constitution's got 2 years. Someone like Tappet, Curlin, you've got a million foals. But you have these options here with the daily racing form, with the formulator specifically. So that is a big reason why Mike and I like to continue to use DRF, because you can get little extra edges on those. I can't speak to what Equibase or Timeform or Brisnet do. I can only speak to what DRF does, but there are those tools available. A big thing for me for the slop is the sires. I know I've learned from other people. Curlin is a great one. Malibu Moon is great. Yep. And then as far as 2-year-olds, as far as 2-year-olds go for maidens, if it's the big tracks, specifically I follow Del Mar and Santa Anita. There's certain people who I just I keep an ear out, and whenever they say anything about a horse, I make a note about it. If it's about 2-year-olds, if someone's working out really well, private clockers, there are a couple of those that I follow that really love a horse. So it's just little things like that.
Yeah, I think another thing that's pertinent is we talk about Luis Mendez, and if for instance, if Ruben Fuentes is up for him in California, that's an edge. When you have Kentucky Derby hopeful trainers or big time trainers that are training for big races, pay very close attention where their favorite jockey is. I think that's kind of a dead giveaway when you have a turf race where you have 2 Chad Browns that are first-time stars and one of them has IRAD. Guess which one I'm playing? The one with IRAD. Like it's not rocket science, but it's something that a lot of times people will be scared to leave one off and include the other. But like if IRAD's up on a Chad Brown horse on the turf at Saratoga and the other horse is being ridden by Castellano, and I'm going to look at it and say IRAD has choice. He picked this one, and I think you do have to pay attention to things like that. So that would be another one where I think it's worthwhile looking at, and you can simply do that by how many starts did they have with that trainer. And if one jockey has 300 and the other has 20, guess which one's getting the better horse?
Exactly.
They're the ones running for him 300 times. So I think that's another good way to look at it, especially if you have 2 horses coming from the same barn.
Coming up this week.
There's another one. I just keep thinking of all it. Kintheros.
Yeah.
Another good winnerly sire, good mud sire.
Mike and I had, I shouldn't say that. Mike had a great idea for a shirt that we were going to sell.
Shut down.
We couldn't do it. I guess the breeding farms all would have had pissy issues with it. But the idea was going to be just to do like top 10 fathers or world's best fathers and just have all of our favorite sires. So that would have been a great tool. We could have just said, buy the T-shirt and you'll never not know who we love as a sire. Yeah.
If they're on your back, throw them in the ticket.
Coming up this week on Tuesday is the rescheduled card from Kentucky Downs from this past Sunday. So we've got that going. Wednesday is their closing day, I believe. They have the Claiming Crown races and also the Nevada State Bank Franklin Simpson Stakes. So I'll have a preview for that at racingdudes.com. You can check that out shortly. Not finished with that, but almost done with it. And then this coming weekend, we're back at Woodbine. We kind of have to do Woodbine because this is, they had the Queen's Plate, which is their biggest race. Now this weekend, we've got the Woodbine Mile, which is a grade 1 for the Breeders' Cup Mile on Saturday. The Natalma Stakes and Summer Stakes are on Sunday. Those are Breeders' Cup Juvenile Turf and Juvenile Fillies Turf races, prep races. So those will be big. So I'll have previews for those over at racenews.com. We had a question come up, Mike, before we leave. Will you do a grid and tickets for the Canterbury Pick 5 on Wednesday? There's a $41,000 carryover and big fields.
Probably not because of Kentucky Downs. So I hit the pick 5 last Wednesday for $5,000. I hit the pick 4 on Thursday for $1,000 with the Sama Bomb. Saturday came back and I hit it was 9 of 11 must-use winners, including 7 on top at Kentucky Downs, which is not easy to do, and won the last 10 races and must-use are next up. So I think I will be staying at Kentucky Downs until that changes a little bit. So I'll probably do Kentucky Downs back for both Tuesday and Wednesday. And if I have time, and this is, then maybe I'll try and put something together. I would love to play. I didn't realize there was a carryover, so I appreciate it. Thank you, Alex, for letting me know. I will definitely try and put something together. And if I do have time to put a grid, that would be free on Twitter. I wouldn't be doing the bombs with that. So the bombs are going to be Kentucky Downs those 2 days because people love Kentucky Downs. I love Kentucky Downs. We've had such success doing it the last 3 days, but maybe we'll have a freebie out there for Canterbury if I get the time. I'm just honestly not sure if I'll have time before then.
How dare you? How dare you try to spread your time with your wife and your lovely little daughter? How dare you?
Yeah, and all the other tracks and this weekend and figure in the work.
And you have a job, by the way, too. Yeah. That's not this. Yeah,
that stuff. So.
Make sure you're following us on Twitter. I'm at Curtis Color. He's at SummerBomb18, number 1, number 8, corporate overlords at racing_dudes. Make sure you check out Blinkers Off this week. Mike and I will be back on Thursday, same bat time, same bat place with a pick 4 sequence. We'll figure out at some point. Until then, thank you so much for joining us. I'm Magic.
And I'm Mike.
We'll see you next time.
The Magic Mike Show, where you hear the experts speak. The Magic Mike Show. Tune into the show every week. The Magic Mike Show. You can trust the show is the bomb because it's being brought to you by racingdudes.com.